Sometimes it feels like everything is falling apart. Institutions failing, trust evaporating, people more divided and exhausted than ever. If you've sensed it too, here's the truth. You're not crazy. What we call collapse doesn't begin with broken systems out there. It begins in here, in minds worn down, disconnected, too numb to see clearly. And the real question isn't whether society can survive this. It's whether your mind can escape it. You don't need a headline to tell you something's wrong. You feel it before you read it. It starts in the morning. You wake up already tired. Not the kind of tired a good sleep fixes, the kind that sits behind your eyes. You pick up your phone just to check one thing, and 20 minutes later your mind is buzzing with 10 problems you can't solve before breakfast. A disaster in one place, a scandal in another, 3 arguments no one will remember tomorrow, and a friend's life that looks perfect in a square. On the commute, you notice it in people's faces, rushed, brittle, politely distant. Everyone is managing something invisible. Everyone is somewhere else. Conversations skim across the surface like stones. Busy? So busy. You agree because that's the only answer that doesn't require a story. At work, policies change faster than the reasons for them. Meetings are performances where certainty is more valuable than truth. You watch adults say 2 contradictory things and treat it as alignment. You start editing yourself, not because you don't know what you think, but because you've learned that clarity costs energy you don't have. By afternoon, you're scrolling between tasks because focus feels like lifting weight you didn't train for. You tell yourself you're catching up. Really, you're dosing yourself with novelty because your nervous system forgot what calm feels like. You keep a dozen tabs open, none of them satisfying, all of them loud. In the evening, you try to connect, but connection now means trading notifications in the same room. People talk past each other, rehearsing lines they've already posted. You bring something real and watch the air shift. Too heavy for a weekday, someone jokes and the moment closes. Later you promise you'll go to bed early. Instead you slip into the soft blue tunnel where time loses its edges. The algorithm hands you a sequence of almost meaningful fragments. Outrage packaged as information, inspiration packaged as consumption, intimacy packaged as a brand. It feels like being fed without ever eating. You fall asleep tired, wake up tired, repeat. That's how collapse announces itself. Not as sirens, but as static. Not as a single breaking point, but as the slow disassembly of attention, trust, and meaning. You notice how hard it is to think a thought all the way through. You notice how fast you abandon your own judgment when the crowd surges. You notice that rest no longer restores you, that entertainment no longer entertains you, that work no longer builds toward anything you recognize. You can feel the social fabric thinning in small ways. People are quicker to anger, slower to forgive. Minor inconveniences trigger major reactions because everyone is carrying a private deficit. Apologies are rarer than announcements. Humility is rarer than certainty. And underneath it all, a single, heavy question. What is any of this for? We were told the problem was out there. Politics, platforms, systems, and yes, those matter. But look closely and you'll see something quieter. Minds running on fumes. Minds trained to react before they reflect. Minds so overstimulated they mistake motion for meaning and noise for proof. The ecosystem changed first. Our habits followed. Our nervous systems adapted to survive the feed, not to understand the world. So you stop blaming yourself for feeling this way. Exhaustion isn't a personal failure, it's a design outcome. The economy of attention needs you fragmented. The culture of performance needs you insecure. The cycle of outrage needs you available at all times. And the more you comply, the less of you remains. If this is collapse, this is its front line. The moment you can't tell what you believe without checking who agrees. The moment you can't be alone without seeking an audience. The moment you can't rest without first earning it from a machine. But there's another way to read the symptoms. They aren't just warnings, they're directions. Every pain point points to a skill we were never taught. how to protect attention like a resource, how to regulate emotion without outsourcing it to the crowd, how to build meaning on purpose instead of borrowing it from trends. Because society might be unraveling at the edges, but collapse isn't inevitable in your mind. If you can see the pattern, you can interrupt it. If you can name the tax, you can stop paying it. So let's map the machinery that's been running you. Not the headlines, the mechanisms, the forces that turn clear minds into tired ones, curious people into spectators, and communities into comment sections. Once you see how the system gets inside your head, you can start building the exit. Every society has tools for control. In the past, it was swords and borders. Today, it's subtler, because the battlefield is your attention. Think about it. Armies don't need to occupy your city if they can occupy your nervous system. And the modern world has 3 weapons that do exactly that: the market of attention, the loop of fear, and the pressure of belonging. The market of attention. Your focus isn't just scattered by accident, it's harvested. Every ping, scroll, and notification isn't a neutral distraction, it's an auction. Companies compete for your attention the way empires once fought for land. And here's the dark part. The product isn't just your time, it's your mind. The longer you stare, the more predictable you become. The more predictable you become, the easier you are to steer. And the more you're steered, the less you remember how to choose. The loop of fear. Humans evolved to notice danger. It kept us alive when shadows hid predators. But in a world of infinite information, fear becomes infinite too. Every headline warns you. Every post alerts you. Every debate frames the other side as a threat. And your nervous system doesn't distinguish between a predator in the grass and a rumor online. The same adrenaline hits. The same tunnel vision narrows your choices. The same reflex demands obedience to whoever promises safety. Fear is the oldest fuel for mass control, and now it can be delivered in real time, on demand, worldwide. The pressure of belonging. The final mechanism runs deeper than attention or fear. It lives in your biology. For our ancestors, belonging wasn't optional. The tribe was survival. Exile was death. That wiring never left us. Which is why rejection still hurts like injury, why silence feels like suffocation. Modern society exploits this by making acceptance conditional on compliance. Agree with the script, you're rewarded. Disagree, and you're punished. Not always with violence, but with ridicule, exclusion, or the quiet erasure of being ignored. Most people don't notice how much of their life is lived to avoid that exile. But the outsider always notices. When these 3 mechanisms combine, attention drained, fear amplified, belonging threatened, something happens inside the mind. You start outsourcing your sense of reality. You stop asking, "What do I think?" and start asking, "What will they think of me?" You stop weighing evidence and start counting likes. You stop pursuing meaning and start chasing validation. And the collapse accelerates. Here's the unsettling truth. The system doesn't need you to believe in it wholeheartedly. It just needs you tired enough, scared enough, and isolated enough to stop resisting. Collapse begins when the crowd stops thinking, but it ends when the individual forgets how to. That's why your exhaustion matters. That's why your confusion isn't just personal, it's political. Because a society of scattered minds can't hold a shared reality. And without a shared reality, collapse isn't an event, it's a condition. The question is, once you see the machinery, can you stop being part of it? Can you break the loop before it breaks you? Collapse doesn't just tear down systems, it seeps into you. It rewires how you think, how you feel, even how you experience time. At first, it looks like simple fatigue. You tell yourself you're just busy, that you just need a weekend, that it's just a stressful season. But the season doesn't end. The weekend doesn't restore you. Rest feels less like recovery and more like a pause between rounds. Then comes the numbness. The things that used to spark excitement, books, conversations, projects, start to feel flat. You go through the motions, but nothing penetrates. Entertainment feels like background noise. Work feels like survival. Relationships feel like negotiations. Your nervous system has learned to conserve energy by shutting down enthusiasm before it starts. And underneath it all, the loss of meaning. That's the deepest wound collapse inflicts. You begin to wonder, silently, if anything matters. If the hours you trade, the headlines you consume, the updates you scroll through, if any of it adds up to something real. But you don't say it out loud, because you know what the group will say. Stay positive. Don't overthink it. Just be grateful. So you learn to keep your questions hidden. But here's the cruel irony. Those questions are the healthiest part of you. They're the immune response of a mind refusing to die quietly. They're the signal that collapse hasn't fully claimed you yet. Because collapse thrives on autopilot. It wants you scrolling instead of thinking, consuming instead of creating, conforming instead of questioning. The moment you pause and ask, why am I doing this? Who decided this was normal? That's the moment the spell starts to break. Still, the cost is heavy. Burnout makes you impatient. Numbness makes you detached. Meaninglessness makes you vulnerable to anyone who promises certainty. That's why entire societies can fall into collective trances. Individuals drain to the point where surrender feels easier than awareness. If you felt this in your own mind, the fatigue, the numbness, the loss of meaning, you're not weak, you're not broken. You're living inside a structure that profits from keeping you that way. And the truth no one wants to admit is this. Society can't collapse without first collapsing the minds that make it up. Which means that every person who chooses awareness, who chooses to fight for clarity, becomes a break in the chain. So the question shifts. Not just, is society collapsing? But, will you collapse with it? Or will you learn how to stand while the walls fall? Every collapse has a warning stage, the moment where the walls are cracking but not yet crumbled. Most people ignore it. They tell themselves it's fine. They adapt. They normalize. And that's how collapse wins. Quietly, invisibly, one compromise at a time. But if you know what to look for, you can catch it before it buries you. The first sign is constant distraction. Not the occasional boredom scroll, but the inability to be with your own thoughts for even a minute. When silence feels unbearable, when you reach for your phone before you realize your hand moved, that's not just habit, it's dependency. Collapse wants you restless, because restless people don't resist. The second sign is emotional blunting. You notice that outrage feels cheap, joy feels distant, and everything else registers as fine. Fine is collapse's favorite word. Fine is what people say when they've forgotten how to feel. Fine means the system has drained your nervous system to the point where numbness is safer than honesty. The third sign is borrowed beliefs. Listen to how you explain yourself. Are the words really yours, or do they sound suspiciously like headlines, slogans, or something you half heard online? Collapse doesn't need to erase your mind. It just needs to fill it with prefabricated thoughts that pass for your own. The fourth sign is chronic fatigue with no clear cause. Your body's healthy, your sleep is decent, but you wake up tired anyway. That's the weight of unresolved tension, your nervous system burning fuel against an environment designed to exhaust you. It's not laziness. It's evidence that you're carrying more than you realize. And finally, the fifth sign, loss of inner authority. You stop asking, what do I think? And start asking, what will they think of me? Your compass turns outward. You edit your words before you speak them. You dress your thoughts for approval before they leave your mouth. That's when collapse isn't just around you, it's inside you. If you recognize these signs, you're already at the turning point. You can either normalize them, let them deepen until they define you, or you can choose to step back and see them for what they are, symptoms of a system that doesn't serve you. Because here's the truth, collapse doesn't want you to know. The very moment you recognize it is the moment it loses some of its power. Awareness is the first fracture in its armor. And if you can widen that fracture, You can step out before it closes around you completely. The next step is learning how to catch yourself before you slide into numbness, how to reclaim your attention before it's auctioned away, how to rebuild meaning when the world is designed to scatter it. That's where survival begins, not by waiting for society to fix itself, but by building the kind of mind collapse can't own. Escaping collapse doesn't mean leaving society. It means refusing to let society colonize your mind. And that requires building what most people never learn: mental immunity. Not the kind of immunity that blocks everything out, but the kind that filters, protects, and strengthens you until the chaos around you can't hollow you out. There are 5 core survival skills. Skill 1: attention discipline. Your attention is the most valuable resource you own, and the first one: collapse targets. Start treating it like currency. Guard it, budget it, spend it with intention. That means cutting off sources that profit from your distraction. It means practicing single tasking in a world of noise, and it means rediscovering silence, not as emptiness, but as fuel for thought. A scattered mind can't resist collapse. A focused one can. Skill 2: emotional regulation. Collapse thrives on reactivity. Outrage and fear are contagious, and the quicker you react, the easier you are to control. Emotional regulation doesn't mean becoming cold. It means inserting space between stimulus and response. The pause where you breathe, observe, and choose instead of being dragged by impulse. In that pause lives freedom. In that pause, collapse loses its grip. Skill 3: inner authority. When collapse seeps inside, it replaces your compass with the crowd's. Inner authority is the practice of taking your own judgment seriously again. Ask yourself, what do I actually believe? What do I actually want? Then act on those answers, even when they conflict with the script. Collapse can manipulate groups. It can't easily manipulate individuals who know who they are. Skill 4: meaning making. Collapse wants you aimless, consuming instead of creating. To resist, you need anchors, reasons to live that aren't borrowed from the algorithm. That could be a craft, a philosophy, a cause, or the quiet commitment to people you love. Without a personal why, the world's noise will give you one. With a personal why, the noise becomes irrelevant. Skill 5: selective connection. Collapse isolates people in plain sight, scrolling together, sitting apart. Immunity doesn't mean rejecting connection, it means choosing it carefully. Find the rare few who value honesty over comfort, curiosity over conformity, presence over performance. A single real ally strengthens you more than 1,000 digital acquaintances. Collapse is contagious, but so is clarity. None of these skills are easy. They require practice in small, daily choices. Closing the tab instead of chasing the feed, breathing before reacting, writing down your own thoughts before absorbing someone else's. But every time you practice, you widen the gap between yourself and the collapsing current. And slowly, you stop being carried downstream. You become the rare person standing still, clear, untangled, while the crowd rushes past. That's when collapse loses its favorite weapon, your compliance. Here's the paradox of resisting collapse. The stronger your immunity grows, the stranger you will seem to everyone else, because most people don't want clarity. They want comfort. They don't want to know that their fatigue is systemic, that their outrage is engineered, that their distractions are profitable. They want to believe things are basically fine. And when you stop playing along, you become a mirror they don't want to face. That's why outsiders so often feel exiled. You'll notice it in conversations. You pause before nodding at something you don't agree with. You question a joke no one else questions. You decline a trend everyone else treats as mandatory. And in that moment, you're marked. Not as dangerous, but as different. Collapse doesn't just punish dissent, it makes dissenters invisible. People may smile, but they pull back. Invitations fade. You find yourself orbiting the edges of the group, watching it from a distance, wondering if you've made a mistake. But here's the truth. Isolation isn't a curse. It's a signal. It means your mind is no longer synced to the trance. And that space you've been forced into, the space outside, can become your greatest strength if you learn how to use it. Think of history's outsiders, philosophers who refused the crowd's illusions, artists who saw beauty where society saw nothing, scientists who asked questions that made others laugh until the answers changed the world. None of them belonged comfortably inside the group. All of them used their separation as leverage. When collapse is collective, sanity will always look like solitude. But solitude isn't empty. It's the clearing where original thought can breathe. It's the silence where you hear your own voice again. It's the distance that lets you see the whole picture instead of just the frame the group hands you. Yes, it costs you. You'll lose approval. You'll lose easy belonging. But what you gain is priceless. The ability to see clearly when others can't. The ability to stand still when others stampede. The ability to live by an inner compass that collapse cannot touch. This is the outsider's role. Not to fix the system directly, but to remain unbroken while it breaks around you. To hold a line of clarity, so that when others finally tire of the trance, there is someone left who remembers what reality feels like. Your isolation isn't proof that you're broken. It's proof that you're awake. And in a collapsing society, awake people are the ones who carry the seeds of whatever comes next. Collapse doesn't stay hidden forever. At first it's invisible, felt only as exhaustion, distraction, unease. But eventually the cracks widen enough that even the most comfortable minds can't avoid them. This is the stage of awakening. And it's messy. It begins with dissonance, when what people are told no longer matches what they see. The headlines say stability, but their lives feel unstable. The leaders promise certainty, but their words contradict themselves. The group insists everything is fine, but the emptiness grows louder than the reassurance. At first, most people double down. They cling tighter to the story. They get louder in their certainty. They label questions as dangerous. That's the panic of a trance losing its grip. But then comes the quiet moment, the one no one announces, when an individual finally admits something is off. Once that thought enters, it doesn't leave. It grows. You notice inconsistencies you ignored before. You ask questions you used to swallow. You wonder why everyone is repeating the same phrases as if they rehearsed them. And slowly, you realize the truth. It wasn't just you who was exhausted or numb or lost. It was the system itself draining everyone. Awakening isn't euphoric. It's disorienting. You see how much of your life you lived on autopilot, how many beliefs you borrowed without testing, how many hours you traded for goals that weren't yours. It feels like grief, because part of you dies. But it also feels like relief, because part of you is finally born. History shows this moment again and again. The fall of Rome, the decline of empires, the collapse of movements built on illusions. When the spell breaks, it doesn't break evenly. Some wake up early and pay the price of being misunderstood. Some wake up late and wonder how they were fooled for so long. But once awakening begins, the trance can't fully hold. And that's why your role matters. Outsiders who refuse to collapse early become guides. Not by preaching, not by forcing, but simply by existing as proof that another way of thinking, feeling, and living is possible. Awakening spreads quietly. A conversation here, a hesitation there, a question whispered instead of silenced. It's fragile, but it's contagious. And when enough individuals reclaim their minds, collapse loses its foundation. Because collapse isn't just broken systems, it's broken awareness. Restore the awareness, and the system's power fades. The moment of awakening is the most dangerous and the most hopeful. Dangerous because the collapsing system will fight hardest to keep its grip. Hopeful because this is when individuals rediscover what they forgot, that freedom was never out there in the system. It was always in here, in the mind. And once a mind wakes up, it's nearly impossible to put it back to sleep. Awakening isn't the end of collapse, it's the beginning of resistance. Because the moment you wake up, the world will try to drag you back under. You'll feel it immediately. Friends who once seemed harmless now pressure you to stop overthinking. Headlines that once passed unnoticed now scream for your outrage. Notifications claw at your attention like vines pulling you back into the maze. Collapse doesn't need to defeat you, it just needs to distract you until you forget you ever escaped. That's why awakening without immunity is fragile. You can see clearly one week, then find yourself lost the next, wondering how you got pulled back into the same loops you swore you'd left behind. Immunity is what stops that. It's not about rejecting society, it's about becoming unhookable by its traps. Here's how it works. First, master the pause. Collapse thrives on speed. The faster you react, the less you think. Immunity begins the moment you insert a breath between impulse and action. That breath is small, but it's a wedge. In that space, you can choose clarity over reflex. Second, audit your inputs. Your mind is porous. Whatever you consume shapes it. Collapse feeds you noise disguised as news, outrage disguised as importance, vanity disguised as value. Immunity means filtering ruthlessly, not to live in ignorance, but to ensure what enters your mind is worth carrying. Third, anchor your identity. If you don't decide who you are, collapse will decide for you. It will assign you labels, categories, teams. Immunity comes from rooting identity deeper than the crowd's approval, into principles, into meaning you've chosen for yourself. Fourth, build real connections. Collapse isolates you with shallow connection. 10,000 followers, 0 true allies. Immunity means investing in the few people who see you without a mask, who value honesty over comfort. A mind linked with other awake minds is far harder to drag back into the trance. Fifth, redefine success. Collapse tells you success is accumulation of money, of status, of visibility. Immunity is redefining it as alignment, living in a way that doesn't fracture you. The moment you stop chasing collapse's definitions, its grip weakens. Immunity doesn't mean nothing touches you. It means everything passes through you without owning you. Fear may knock, but it doesn't move in. Distraction may tempt, but it doesn't hook. Noise may surround, but silence remains inside. The truth is, collapse will never stop trying to reclaim you. But once you've built immunity, it doesn't matter. Because collapse only has power over borrowed minds, and a mind that belongs fully to itself cannot be collapsed. Here's the deepest truth about collapse. It doesn't end when systems fail. It ends when enough individuals stop collapsing inside themselves. Because collapse isn't just broken governments, failed economies, or corrupted institutions. Those are symptoms. The real collapse begins in the mind, when people trade awareness for distraction, truth for comfort, and freedom for belonging. And the real escape begins the moment you refuse that trade. The final escape isn't about withdrawing from society or hiding from the world. It's about living in the middle of it without being ruled by it. To see the noise, but not mistake it for music. To witness the chaos, but not let it set your rhythm. To walk among the collapsed without letting collapse define you. This is the paradox of freedom. It doesn't come from fixing the crowd. It comes from no longer needing its approval. The systems may keep crumbling, the noise may keep rising, the crowd may keep chasing illusions, but you, anchored in clarity, become untouchable. And here's what happens when you reach that place. You stop performing. You stop defending yourself against every misunderstanding. You stop fearing exile because you've learned to live outside the walls of borrowed identity. You don't become cold, you become steady. You don't escape people. You escape the need to mirror their illusions. That's what it means to live free in a collapsing society, not waiting for someone else to repair the world, but refusing to let the world dismantle you. Not trying to wake everyone, but staying awake yourself, and letting your clarity ripple quietly into the lives of those who are ready. Because collapse can only spread through borrowed minds. And the moment you reclaim yours, you're free. That freedom may not change the entire world overnight, but it will change your world. And in times like these, that's where every revolution begins.